Good morning, and good afternoon, and I think good evening, because we've got Doris joining us all the way in New Zealand. Greetings to you all, and a very, very warm welcome to what is now our third conversation of the year. So we've had a conversation that started in Kenya, and last month we had a conversation in India, and today we have a conversation coming to you from three individuals based in Ghana, but speaking to you from two continents. So I would like to extend a very, very warm welcome to a conversation that's going to be moderated by B. Arthur from the Ghana Culture Forum, in conversation with Odile Tebi from Mbuku Foundation and Sela Ajay from the University of Media, Arts and Communication in Accra. And so we're really grateful for this very unique space that we are able to witness and share with you, that kind of goes beyond institutional, geographical, or even disciplinary boundaries, where we really are able to experiment with what a decentered conversation can look like, and thinking about knowledge creation and sharing regarding fashion practices. So for this year's program, we've really kind of looked at one key question and a kind of recurring topic that we're wanting to look at, and it's really thinking about designing goods and crafting communities. What is really being lost, which is kind of going to be addressed in a set of questions that are kind of loosely cohering these three individuals that we're very honored to have in the room to join us. I am going to hand over to our moderator, B, and I'm just going to do a very short introduction. And B. Arthur is a polyglot and the current fashion domain leader of the Ghana Culture Forum. So we're really, really excited to have you with us. And, you know, just in terms of the route that you've taken to get to fashion, with no formal training in fashion, but actually fashion is the lens with which you speak and the language with which you're doing really important kind of activism in Ghana, together with the Ghana International Fashion Team and as a member of the Global Fashioning Assembly. So with a very warm welcome, I want to hand over to you, B. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Erica. Wonderful. Happy to be here, as always, and so excited to have Odile and Salah, whom I've known for quite some time. They're both very much important. They do important work in the sphere of both textiles, fashion, and art. So it's a joy, it's a pleasure. And yes, I think that you've already, I don't know if we've already introduced Odile, but she's actually the director of Mbuku Foundation. Mbuku Foundation is an art space, but then they also have, I think, a sister outfit in the northern part of Ghana, which focuses more on textiles and clay. And yes, and then as you mentioned earlier, we have with us Sela Ajay, which who we popularly refer to as Efo Sela because he's a fine artist. That's how I know him. And yes, so he's an author, he's an art educator, and so I'm sure we'll have a truly exciting conversation. Just for purposes of our conversation, obviously we have some questions here, but Sela and Odile, the questions are just sort of like just to guide us, but we can always, the whole idea of Global Fashioning Assembly, what I love about it is that you can disrupt and you can refuse to answer questions. You can absolutely say what if you disagree with them, you don't have to acquiesce or agree with anything. So that's the beautiful part of it. So yes, so I think I would go with Odile first. The question I have before me is, what is the current relationship in our Ghanaian context between Ghanaian fashion designers and craft communities? Now, as a Ghanaian designer myself, I've always had to deal with this whole aspect of how do I use something that has been existed or has been in existence, preserved, with a whole lot of there's a cultural significance to things. So how do I use it to express myself, to quote unquote celebrate it without being disrespectful? And so then you have this clash between modernity and trying to preserve your heritage. Now, since I'm the moderator, it's not for me to talk too much. I'd like to hear what you have to say on the topic, Odile.
Good morning, everybody, and thanks for having me. Yeah, I've been kind of mulling over some of the questions and trying to figure out how best to sort of address them. But I'm looking at how our crafts would have been used traditionally anyway. And if you're looking at textiles or any other craft forms, my research has shown me that we're having patrons commissioning fabrics to commemorate events, historical events. And also you might have a patron commissioning fabric to celebrate maybe a harvest or a festival. And so that connection between patronage and culture has existed. And so I'd kind of extrapolate it to what is it that a fashion designer is wanting from a crafts person. And I think it's kind of a similar sort of commission, because sometimes when you're looking at what is the name of a kente fabric, for example, you'd find that the kente weaver will say, I've my craftsmanship is exhausted. You find many labels like that. It's like, I'm done. I've kind of used all
so basically the
creativity to the extent that
the
I don't
name in
really
the
have
local
much
language
left.
would reflect that, right? Sorry, I'm just trying to support what you're saying. That the name given to a particular fabric in a local language in English will translate to what you are saying, correct?
Yeah, that my Adanvo, which is like I'm exhausted. My creativity is exhausted because this commissioning that is taking place is really something that I really want to put my all in. And so that is what is happening. I'm exhausting my creativity. So I'm expecting that fashion designers are playing a similar role with craftsmen and sort of working with them to create something which is extraordinary. So I see that still happening today, where the patron of a craftsperson might not always be the chief or the queen mother or a sort of a rich patron, is moving beyond this community circles to a fashion designer or somebody else who's not necessarily within that community. So I see it as an ongoing dynamic conversation.
In other words, what you're trying to say is that it's not static, it evolves. And so we as designers play an important role there. As it also, it's about economics, isn't it also? I mean, it's inevitably.
I think very much so.
Yeah.
Most of the people that we are working with in the Upper West might have come through from farming. Some of them would probably go to the farm in the morning and continue with the weaving, when the sun is going down. So there's sort of there's a balancing act going on. Of course, the creative side of their, of who they are is also developed and is at play. But it's a matter of where do we make our ends meet. In the last 60 years in the Upper West region, there's been 2 schools set up which are teaching strip weaving. So the strip weaving culture has changed. We no longer have the 4-inch strip, which is known, throughout Ghana. We have the semi-broad loom, which was introduced by the trainers in the vocational schools. So that has meant that a lot of people are now taking weaving as a full-time practice, full-time job. So migrating away from having it as something that is balancing their income from farming as a full-time income for them.
That's great. Sela, what do you have to say about this? What is your take on the relationship between fashion designers and craft communities? Are we disrupting something? Are we contaminating what they do, or are we there to support them, in your opinion?
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank Angela and Erica for giving us this opportunity to share our experience and our knowledge with this academic community. So first of all, I'll just like to build on what Odile has already said. Personally, I see this relationship more as a symbiotic relationship where each group depends on the other. What we need to first bear in mind is the fact that a lot of these, professional or fashion designers who have gone through some of these formal educational curricula on, creating textiles and fabrics and designs and all that, they depend on sourcing a lot of their materials, both from imported stuff and the craft communities, and vice versa. The craft communities also kind of depend on some of these fashion designers to also produce clothes and designs and things from the fabrics that they produce. And in many African contexts, the local fashion design school plays a crucial role in shaping designers' relationship with crafts production and traditional weaving practices. So and in Ghana particularly, apart from the traditional fashion schools that we have, we also have the vocational institutions. And these vocational institutions and fashion schools also often incorporate elements of indigenous crafts production into their curricula. So they teach them how to dye yarns, they teach them how to weave, how to spin, and how to create some of these fabrics like the way we do it in our local communities, where these weavers and those who dye the yarn have not gone through the formal education system. So they learn from these communities, and it emphasizes the importance of preserving and promoting our local textile design industry and our weaving practices as well. And these designers are encouraged to draw inspiration from their cultural heritage, integrating some of the traditional designs, the motifs, and the symbols that we have, and the techniques, and even the material that they incorporate into the kind of fabric that they produce. And by incorporating all these important elements, these designers develop a deeper appreciation for their cultural roots and contribute to the preservation of our local weaving practices. And these fashion design schools and vocational institutions also facilitates a lot of these important collaborations with the local craft communities, where they provide students with hands-on experience and fostering a kind of mutual exchange or understanding between the designers and the local the crafts people and the weavers in our traditional communities. And so through initiatives like the Wori Festival that was funded by Odile.
Thank you for coming, and you're very welcome. The Upper West is rich in culture, in its people, its values, formed over the centuries. Nubuka Foundation's festival, our Wori Festival, promotes the wealth and the worth of the Upper West.
Welcome to Wori 2024! Hooray!
Definitely inspired by coming to Wori. The only thing we can say is that thanks to Nubuke Foundation, I'm being blown away, and it's just the second day. It's amazing.
The experience has been very insightful and enlightening. And I can't wait for the next one. This is my first time, and I think I will come for the next one.
A textile installation is a collaboration between artists, weavers, and the British Council. And they created these interesting fabrics over here. And it's a way to showcase to the whole community what our mothers are doing, what the weavers are doing.
The Wori Festival is a wonderful festival everyone should experience. Wherever you are, any part of the world, you should be here to see how it's celebrated.
Really lovely to see not only the finished work that is all around us, but people actually making the work, the exhibitions of the ongoing weaving.
The theme this year is weaving a sustainable future for the next generation. The reason that we chose this theme is to ensure that even as we're thinking about the future of weaving, we are still taking cognizance of the genesis of weaving industry in the Upper West region. We've had fashion shows, music concert by Wiala. That was really an electrifying hour and a half with her.
There are so many things, to appreciate in the Wori 2024. We have experienced weavers who are doing live demonstrations that people can learn from. There was a kite workshop that saw children learning how to build their own kite. And then we have film screenings, a fashion show. And generally, Wori is a festival that keeps the tradition alive. It keeps the tradition growing. And so if we invite people to come to Wori, it's an invitation to connect to the culture, to the people, and to the various creative expressions that they have to offer to the world. Some of these vocational institutions bring their students to engage with some of the master weavers in the craft communities and the weaving communities to learn firsthand from these master weavers, to in a way teach them to incorporate some of these indigenous techniques and materials into their designs, because their school curriculum cannot teach them everything that is in the textbook. And this is how I see this relationship, because it's a holistic approach which enriches the educational experience, but also ensures the preservation and promotion of Ghana's rich weaving traditions. This is the kind of relationship I see, between fashion designers and local craft communities.
Okay, so in other words, it's not just about economics as far as you're concerned. They're not just producing textiles to please us because they need to put food on the table, but it's actually a symbiotic relationship. So we as designers presumably are playing an important role in helping preserve our heritage, promote our culture. So you don't see anything negative as far as you're concerned about this relationship, us trying to come up with modern designs, sometimes influencing the colors, the patterns, the sizes. You don't think that we are interfering, and even if we are, I believe there's more advantage than disadvantage. Would you agree?
I agree both ways. First of all, I need to clarify something. We have this conception of modernity as something progressive, quote unquote, or something new or something more innovative than what we have here. But modernity is just a concept. You understand? It simply means something that is current. And I am one of those people who does not want to draw this sharp distinction between quote unquote modernity and quote unquote tradition, because if we are thinking of the concept of modernity as something that's current, then these so-called traditional weavers or traditional craftspeople are also modern in their own right, because they are in our current era and they are producing currently, and they are not stuck or static in a time frame that limits their work to a certain age. So we also need to move them along with this idea of modernity, because they're also modern in their own right. Now back to the concerns that you raised, whether fashion designers are doing something negative or not. What I'll consider as a negative practice is more of borrowing so much from Western designs and just appropriating indigenous fabrics or textiles design just to create a mimicry of European fashion taste. That's what I'll call as some form of negativity in this interaction or relationship between our fashion designers and our craftspeople. Because if we are to have this healthy relationship and collaboration with them, everything still needs to be rooted in the indigenous designs. Yes, there's innovation. We can innovate with our designs and all that, but it shouldn't be detrimental to some of our local designers. And some of these designers have their unique Ghanaian fashion style. If you go to these seamstresses, you go to their shops, they design their own. They have an assortment of designs. Sometimes they print it and hang it in their spaces. I'm sure you are aware. I
will challenge you on that. I will challenge you on that, but maybe not today, because some of these designs are mine, by the way. I've gone to a lot of tailors. Okay. Yes, I've gone where people have taken pictures of designs that I know, because I didn't, how difficult it is to copyright anything in Ghana. I've actually gone to people when I closed down my workshop. I had to be going sometimes to do alterations in little, workshops somewhere around town. And to my utter, fortunately, I always laugh about it. I just walk in and I see a poster, current designs, and then you have all these symbols or some styles I came up with, and they're just hanging them. Like, okay, that's good. At least I contributed something.
but still, it's a unique Ghanaian design. right? It's unique to
Well,
Ghana.
if you take me to be a unique Ghanaian person or a unique Ghanaian design, then yes, definitely. That's my contribution to my patria, So yeah, cool. Before I let Odile also have her say with regards to, because you've already answered the second question, by the way, in terms of the design schools and the curricula and how these localized relationships, how they manifest themselves and whether there's it's positive, negative, what is the whole situation. So I think you've already answered that question, so I'd allow Odile also to give me her take on it. But I just wanted to comment that I briefly worked with International Trade Center, and they had this ethical fashion initiative. And it was very interesting that at the time, they were also collaborating with the late Vivienne West. And she was making beaded, I think, purses or pouches that were woven by communities in Kenya, the Maasai. And it was at one point there was this conversation I had with I think one of the ladies. I'm not quite sure what exactly. I think she was the coordinator, and it was interesting that some of the colors that Vivienne wanted, the communities, because what I didn't know was that they had a particular color scheme or combinations of beads, which that's how you would identify that this particular beadwork came from this locality and not that one. And then maybe they had some cultural taboos about maybe mixing. I'm not quite sure because I'm not Kenyan. But what I did retain from, back those days when I was still with them is that some of the weave, the beaders, I beg your pardon, they were not too comfortable with some of the color mixing, like it was offensive to them, because and also didn't represent their community. So then what it meant was that either for economic reasons they had to do it because they needed the money. The money was useful. The money went not only to put food on their table, but also apparently for infrastructure. Schools were built, medical facilities. And so they probably, some of them had to do that, and then in other cases, I'm assuming if there were communities that refused to do it, then you'd probably have to go and look for another community that was good. So those are the kind of things. I don't know if that exists in our context, but Odile, has there ever been a situation like that whereby a community in the north of Ghana has refused to weave a particular kind of cloth because they found it offensive, because of their beliefs or existing taboos?
I haven't found that in our work, but it speaks to the fact that our craft communities are carrying, they're carrying quite a lot. They're carrying the history of the community, and our fabrics are embedded with meaning. And sometimes when we're interacting, what we see is just a visual sort of aesthetic. And it's for us to pay attention to what is this fabric? What does it mean to you as a community? And really do more to interrogate what it means. Because if it is, I remember many years ago, we worked with the community in the Volta region, and there's a fabric which was woven to commemorate the coming together of, the Anglo communities, because there had been a lot of fighting. And when they came together after smoking the peace pipe, they wove a particular cloth. And they were always keen to let us know that the color of the peace cloth was an olive green. So even when there were renditions of the design, which of course, people are buying it and sewing it for the sake of design, they would always stress and remind us that the original color, the color that this textile was woven in, which represents us sitting down sign, to sign off the coming together of the Anglo communities is that color. And so it's important that even when we are interacting with the community, these sort of collaborations, we are going beyond just the aesthetic, what we see, and really make sure that we are interrogating and working with the community beyond, and finding out what is the meaning embedded in what you do, and make sure that we're not offending or including their voices in the final design.
Yeah, sure. I agree with you. When I started in fashion, basically it was all very individualistic and selfish. It was about myself. I was trying to find my identity. I didn't grow up in Ghana. So once I came, when I saw that something was beautiful and I thought it would work, when I started customizing my clothes, I didn't necessarily, initially at least, I didn't really know what the meaning of something was. But because of probably my mindset, just like when I go to an art exhibition, I sometimes don't want to know I don't want to know what the artist was saying, because I think that it gives me that freedom to interpret it in a different way, to make it bigger than maybe what that's probably why I also like abstract art, where everybody can give it his or her own interpretation. So I think I was trying to apply that to the colors, the fabrics, the symbols, where I wanted to use them as some kind of building blocks to tell my own story. Then later I did understand that in my pursuit of my own quote unquote happiness and fulfillment, I might end up trampling on other people's or my people's values and being offensive. So now, as an artist, I'm like, how do I continue expressing myself if I'm always afraid to offend somebody? When has there ever been revolution and innovation, when people are always so careful and tiptoeing and all, So how do we go about this? Allowing, I believe, whilst we're preserving our heritage by being respectful and being custodians, should we as artists still have that freedom to do what we like in the name of innovation and self-expression?
What is important is having that knowledge and acknowledging it, and not sort of coming in and thinking that you know it all and kind of running roughshod over what already exists. Acknowledging and respecting the existing culture is liberating, because it means that you're able to use it, transform it, meld it with something else, create a fusion, and then you are actually giving it back to the original form. But if you're not doing that and you come in with a bit of, maybe sometimes it's arrogance coming in with that, then you actually probably part of the destruction of a culture. I think culture would always be transformed and move on and appropriate and take from, all the cultures that are around. I mean, Ghana is not, we might be talking about the Upper West region or the Volta region or wherever, but when you enter those communities, you find that there are migrant communities that contribute to the voice of not just fashion, but to food, to music and all that. So it's about acknowledging what exists and taking it and using it. So I think that's what is important,
Great, yeah. Awesomeness. I think, Efosela, I think it's amazing. I asked you one question, and somehow in your answer, you managed to cover almost all my questions, about, the symbiotic relationship between designers, about curriculum and about time. So I'm actually wondering which other next question I could possibly ask you, because like you basically answered. Yes, go ahead. Do you want to comment?
Can I just, Yes. Let me just add to that reference you made and the response Odile gave. I think the reference you made is really important about the experience you had in Kenya, with the beads and the colors, and why some of the people found it quite offensive. And it tells you about how rich and interconnected African culture and tradition is, because we have similar ethical concerns when it comes to the aesthetics and even the identity of some of these beads and fabrics that we wear, particularly in our political, traditional political spaces and in our sacred spaces. I'll give you an example. Our beads that we wear in Ghana, the beads that you've been seeing, these queen mothers and these young girls doing depot rites wearing. An experienced beader can tell the temperament of whoever strung the beads just by looking at the arrangement. And they can tell if the person who strung the bead was angry in the process of putting the beads on the string, or if the person was depressed, or if the person had lost a loved one and all that. It's an experienced beader can just tell by the arrangement of the beads. And it's the same with the colors. Not all colors are meant to be worn by just any ordinary person. And if you can allow me to share my screen, I'm currently working on a research paper that deals with body adornments and body arts amongst certain spirit medium. So this is a Jogbashi that's undergoing training to become a full spirit medium. And if you see the labeling on all the beads that she's wearing, these individual beads, each of these beads represent a particular deity that she's serving, or a particular deity she's undergoing rites and training to serve. You understand? And each of them have their unique colors that is used to represent them. So first and foremost, the beads are for Jeshidede, in what in Ewe means as for identification. You understand? Yeah, very good. Sure. And so each spirit that she's appeasing has to be represented on her. And so if you are not a priestess, or you've not undergone training, or you are not in the position to assume the role to be wearing these beads in the manner that she's wearing it, then of course certain people who see you in these adornments might consider it as offensive, because you have not undergone the training and you don't have the spiritual legitimacy to adorn yourself with the beads in the manner in which. Yes.
So in other words, if I were tomorrow, if I were to organize a fashion show with the amazing fabrics or textiles woven by the Wari community, and I decide, because I'm a disruptive and scandalous person, that I would adorn the models with these beads, it would be absolutely offensive to the community.
Probably to their cultural sensibilities, because these are not ordinary beads. Do you understand? Okay. And if you wear them in the manner in which she has adorned herself with these beads, these are very powerful beads that are imbued with spiritual potency and spiritual agency. You understand? I got you. And so no ordinary person can just stand up and wear these beads if you've not been empowered, or you've not received the requisite training to adorn yourself in these.
So in other words, if I were to go to Makola, which is our market in Accra, to the bead section, I shouldn't be able to buy these beads as a designer. They shouldn't be freely available to me in the market.
No, they can freely be available to you in the market, but if you are going to use it for the specific purpose that it's intended for, then there's no ethical being raised. Do you understand? It's the same it's the same as Otunfo. Not every fabric, not every kente worn by the Otumfuo can be
Yes.
worn by ordinary people. And that's how come when you were saying this, I was just thinking aloud, because when you go to Bonray right now and you ask, let's say, a Kente weaver who is well versed in this tradition, that's what Odi was talking about, this about knowing, having knowledge about these things and not appearing arrogant in the way that certain people have this cultural arrogance. You understand? So when you go to Bonray right now and you ask an experienced weaver or somebody who's very grounded in the tradition and the law and the history of Asante, and you ask him to weave you the same kente that Asante Hene is the only one supposed to wear when he's sitting in state, he's not going to weave it for you.
I get you, but Odile, so do you believe that if I were to go to Bonray and tell this weaver that I don't intend to use this fabric in Ghana and I'm willing to pay twice as much, he or she, and I don't know, it's a he definitely, because there's a taboo about women weaving kente. We're not going to touch on that today. Are both of you sure that he or she will not sell me that piece of cloth if I were to say that I'm moving to, I don't know, Holland, Canada, Australia, that I won't be able to get that piece of cloth once I'm taking it out of the cultural context?
Even with your last phrase, out of a cultural context, there's always that cultural context attached to a woven strip, which is kente. However you look at it, immediately you see that connection is there. But asking a weaver to weave something which is like for the royal king, it sounds like sacrilege. And I'm not sure, you might get somebody to do it, but I doubt it. So like, what do you think? I mean, it's kind of like
no, it's possible. It's possible to get somebody to weave it for you, but then but you can't use it, like you said, within that.
I can't use it in Ghana. You're coming back to my point.
I'm sure then that question will be asked when your design comes out. Photograph on the runway, is it runway? Fashion runway, and all of a sudden people are looking at this fabric thinking,
exactly.
And who did the question is going to be asked? Who did this?
Yeah,
I get you.
And that's when maybe the people of Asante might find it culturally insensitive and offensive, because this act, like Odile said, is a sacrilege, and it's even it can even cause a chief to be destooled if he the political authority of the Asante Hene by wearing something that is only reserved for the Asante Hene. These people pride, these hierarchical structures when it comes to symbolism and political authority so much that they dare not challenge, the hierarchy of these power structures in how they even present themselves. So if there's a Durbar and Otumfuo is going to wear a particular cloth at that Durbar, no other chief is supposed to wear that cloth, whether it's reserved for only Otumfuo or other chiefs can wear it. Once Otumfuo is coming in that cloth, you as a chief who is below the Otumfuo cannot wear the same fabric in the same ceremony.
That's interesting. I recall when I first came to Ghana many years ago, I didn't know much. I was very excited about everything I saw, even though I'm Ghanaian, but having grown up outside, I probably was looking, as a diasporan, I was looking through a different prism, and I was very curious to discover as much as possible, regarding my Ghanaian heritage. So it was interesting. When I went to Ghanaian homes, I didn't see much, to be honest. I never saw sculpture, I never saw paintings, I never saw cloths being used decoratively. It was always, if it was inherited, if it was part of a heirloom, it was folded nicely and kept for a special ritual. So that made me understand a little bit, how the whole, how our perceptions and how we treat sculpture, art, textile. And it was the absolute opposite when I went to the homes of expatriates, where, you know, they were busy celebrating Africanness more than we did. Ours was more, you know, what's the word? It's a vestimentary. It was more about clothing, and mostly it was Chinese prints. And the slightly more affluent people wore the Dutch Blisco version. And then, of course, I get to see the full glamour and splendor of kente and northern cloths during special occasions. But the point I'm trying to make is that I went to the homes of expatriates and I saw kente being used in somebody's house as a carpet. Now, mind you, I hadn't even been in Ghana for that long. You know, I was now trying to connect to but I felt there was this very, it was a visceral thing. I felt so offended that Kente was on the floor and was being walked on. And I was like, something is not right about this, because I just knew that it was not supposed to be something that you put. I've also seen it as a bedspread. I've seen it, you know, hanging on walls. So basically, my question is it when somebody buys our kente and takes it away into their house, whether it's in Ghana or outside, we actually have no say in it, how that fabric is being used by somebody else who does not belong to that. He's not an indigenous person and doesn't belong to that culture. So would it be right for me to go to the house of, let's assume I'm in France now, to a French person and say, hey, this fabric has a lot of cultural and spiritual meaning, and it's worn by kings in my country, so how dare you use it to cover your bed or, you know, use it as a carpet?
It's a complex question, but I'll give you a very simple analogy that we can think this through. You know, it's just like religious symbolism, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's taken from one religious context and misusing it in another religious context. Let's say, you know, taking the
swastika from the Asians and making it into a fascist symbol.
Exactly, yes. You understand? Of course, we should have say in how we prefer our you know, cultural materials or cultural goods to be used in a way that feels culturally appropriate for us as a people. And it also fits into this whole dialogue of decolonization. So if as an outsider within our culture, you come into a cultural space and you take our fabric, there's also this responsibility of knowing the use, the culture and the meaning and the histories embedded in this cultural good.
There's no doubt, actually, for me, that if our communities had evolved through generations and around the evolution of society as well, and the way we've interacted with different cultures, we would have come up with a carpet or a rug or a wall hanging or tapestry. But we still have this a lot of the communities that I work with are still very focused on using woven strip as apparel. And one of the things that we are working with them on is woven fabric. There's so many permutations or combinations of this woven strip culture, which can then also be applied in several sectors, in homeware, you know, everywhere else. So we just had this massive gaping hole in our evolution, where we are still looking at how woven strips were used before, which is like, apparel, festivals, it's all woven. And then we've interacted with cultures that are using woven strips in other ways. And so that's why you would have found somebody using a woven strip for a floor, because that's what, that they're coming from somewhere like that. So I think some of the work that we've been doing is bringing different designers together with the weavers to show them that your patronage is not only coming from people who are going to wear your fabric. The textiles that you're weaving should not always be that one strength, one texture. There should be different textures which allow you to open up to different kinds of use of your fabric. So that's where we're at. And I believe this probably have happened maybe centuries ago, but it hasn't. So that's where we're at. So this dynamism will be taking place. And I'm sure that, there'll be a day that you'd go to a community. If it's not Bonwiri, it'll be another community that is only weaving, standing loom tapestries. Because as we're speaking, there's a lady in the Upper West region who migrated there from Benin. The Beninois are weaving on standing looms. Her standing loom can go up to, I don't know, 1 meter in width, which is almost twice what is being woven locally, which is about 40 centimeters. So that opportunity for the standing loom to be used for tapestry, floor cloths, and all that is already there in the Upper West. She's got apprentices who have graduated from her atelier who are also now doing things. So in 10 years' time, with all these interactions, I'm sure they would have a community of standing loom weavers in the Upper West who are able to weave beyond what is being done for apparel. And this will be part of the culture of the Upper West.
Awesome. Yeah. So basically coming to what I've always thought and known, that culture is dynamic, is not static. It evolves, it moves, it changes, and whilst we have custodians who are trying to preserve it in its a pure quote unquote state, we also need people, both weavers, designers, to sort of make it evolve, change it, and make it quote unquote, yes, trendy, fashionable,
adopting.
Yes, absolutely again. And by the way, that whole thing of me initially being scandalized, eventually once I became a fashion designer myself, I think those I personally saw it as this, not change per se, but this whole idea of shock, like, oh my God, you don't do this with this, this is sacrilege, you are tampering. I think I got over that, and I believe that if you see a lot of my collections, in fact, I did even worse, because now I was busy trying to, I always say that my fashion is a mirror of what I am. I'm something that should not have existed. I mean, if my parents had listened to, what their fathers and mothers told them, I would not be in existence, from both sides. So I have this approach also, but at the same time, as I said, not trying to be disruptive, but not trying to be excessively disrespectful. And so, yes, I'm happy that we all agree that there should be room for innovation and progress, and at the same time we have to find a way to preserve our culture. Some of it maybe has to still remain a little bit uncontaminated. And Sela, I'm sure that's what you were saying before you froze.
Yeah. I mean, I also believe a lot in analogies, right? There are certain things that I personally, would not, find aesthetically pleasing when it comes to how some of our fabrics are used. And when you go to other cultures, it's the same thing. Their tastes are their tastes, and how they use certain things or how they've used certain cultural goods over time defines how they are still used today, regardless of the innovation that is going on and all that. Quick question: have you ever seen an Italian reacting to someone cooking broken pasta before? Have you seen those reaction videos before?
Oh my God! Like they're scandalized. They freeze.
Exactly.
Oh God, you don't eat seafood pasta with cheese. You never grate Parmesan on the seafood pasta.
Exactly. And that's how conservative some people are within some of these cultural spaces. They want to still, appreciate these cultural goods in the manner and way in which they were produced and are to be used for. That's how I see it. Yeah.
Yes, well, great. Odile, I think we've touched on the meaning, the role, and the concept of time in crafting communities. I think in more than one ways we've answered it. That it basically time is symbolizes tradition and heritage, and how things change, and how our perceptions change with time, whilst we're still trying to preserve certain things in their pure state.
Well, I think when we talk about, the conversation started with fashion designers and craftspeople.
Yes.
They both look at time in a totally different way. And if you're talking about this fashion designer who wants to send collections abroad, they are meeting, I don't know, season 1, or I don't know how you guys call it, winter season, summer season,
winter,
spring,
fall,
autumn,
summer,
and all that kind of stuff which is going on. Yeah, you are definitely time bound.
Yes.
But when you're working with craft communities, the pace is much more different. I don't know how that is taking place, how that synergy is working. But I find that if you want to pay homage to crafting, which is the hand woven, something that you're paying attention to, how this hand is going in and creating something beautiful. I'm not sure it is something that can be rushed. And I'll throw that question back to you as a fashion designer. How do you accommodate this slower pace to creation as opposed to that fast-paced world where you're trying to meet deadlines? You need to get this thing on board an aircraft. You need to ship it to this shop. There's an order. Do these two worlds meet at all, or they just kind of are existing in a parallel space?
So I'll quickly answer this with a very specific example. Many years ago, USAID wanted to help promote the Northern cloth. And so a whole bunch of us designers were contacted. We were given swatches, and we could choose up to 100 meters or more of a particular cloth, be it striped or plain. And so I remember I chose a color that I thought was beautiful. I loved it. What was interesting was that it was a specific community that was supposed to do it for me. And the whole arrangement by USAID was every community was only allowed to weave what they presented. So like if you don't weave somebody else's swatches or examples or whatever for fabrics. So I ordered that 100, and typically I already planned what I was going to do with the fabric. It was not, I've never done that kind of thing where I've never done things in series, and I don't ship things to any shops, and I didn't have any of those deadlines. But nevertheless, I had planned to do something grandiose because I wanted to actually also play a part in promoting the Northern fabric once I realized that it was predominantly woven by women. What happened was I got half, more or less, before the deadline. And the other half, I had to wait for like 2 or 3 extra months. And when it came, it was a completely different tone of red. So I was like, goodness, thank God I did not, I didn't take anybody's order, because if I'd had to make, bags, so I think at the time I was making a lot of accessories. more accessories than clothing. You know, I even made some lampshades, some bottle jackets, table runners. So I was just like, I was horrified because I was like, if I had taken somebody's order, they would have rejected everything. So that's when I realized that thankfully I don't do that. But I'm sure that for people who do, it would be a bit of a problem. There's no way you can ship anything to anybody outside Ghana on time if you're working with artisans, because anything can happen. So you have to bear that in mind. It was a bit of, it would be a challenge, you know, that those our two worlds would absolutely collide. But in my case, as I said, I did things at my own pace, and mostly it was one of a kind pieces, and also the story. I think as artists, we're storytellers. So even telling somebody that, oh, you can't have two pieces that are identical because they're actually hand woven, you know, by a community, I think it gives value. You know, it gives value to the piece as opposed to this kind of homogeneity. So that is how, fortunately, I handled the matter. But I'm sure for a lot of other designers, it would have been an absolute nightmare. Did I answer your question?
But there's definitely different approaches to all of this, and it depends on what you place value on most. And then what matters to you most will make you accommodate other nuances. Like if it's the fact that it's a hand-woven fabric and you place more premium on that,
Sure.
then you're more
Which is what
likely
I try
to
to
accommodate
do.
and incorporate time in your production cycle. But if it's not, then it's maybe you shouldn't be working with craft communities anyway. Yeah.
Oh, no, I totally understood that from the onset, that there's no way, you know, you just have to, you know, our realities are such that anything can happen. There can be a source shortage of the dye, of the yarn, there can be a flooding, there can be problems. So this is, you know, I never really stressed myself much about it. And also, I'm one of those designers that, in fact, I love adversity, because some of them, I believe, some of my most exciting designs came from situations where I found myself in a fix, and what am I going to do now? But I have to do something, and then that's when the brain started thinking, and then it also made me sort of like a sustainable fashion designer, because I use a lot of pieces and bits and try and become a little bit more imaginative. I think we're getting to the time when we have to allow others to join the conversation. I thank you both so much.